I think she's gone.
I think we're good?
Now filming. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks everyone for joining me here today. My name is Gabe. In this talk, I'm going to talk a bit about WebXR, also known as the immersive web, and why I think it matters. And in particular, I think it's interesting for teachers and students for a number of reasons. I'm going to start off just kind of introducing myself, and then we'll dive right into it. Thanks again. I know time is precious, and it's really exciting for me to be up here. I think, with the possible exception of maybe my fiance and the study of the ancient world, there's nothing I'm more excited about than WebXR and the immersive web. So I'm just grateful for this chance to chat about it with you all today. The next slide, please. A little bit about me. So I used to teach Latin. As I said, I love kind of ancient stuff. I did that in Los Angeles for a few years. Went on to get my master's in education technology with a focus on teachers and students using 3D worlds for online synchronous learning. So I did this research at UCSD. At the time, a lot of it was on Second Life, which at the time had the lion's share of the research about it. After that, I went on my own entrepreneurial journey, trying to make my own 3D world that was specifically geared for the use of teachers and students. That was adorable. Didn't really find much commercial success there, so learned a lot of lessons and failed hard and moved on. After that, I served as head of education at a VR company called WorldViz, and now most recently, I work at a company called VirBELA, where I am a WebXR product manager. And quick high level of what VirBELA does. So VirBELA makes online 3D worlds kind of like AltSpace, but they're really geared for large-scale interactions. So if you look at the top image on this slide, you'll see that big auditorium. VirBELA is for like thousands of users at once doing their thing. But if you look below, the thing that I work on at VirBELA is called Frame, which is a WebXR online collaboration tool that we'll get into later, but this talk really isn't about Frame. It's really about WebXR. I'm not here to sell you on Frame. If you have any questions about it, you're welcome to ask me after the fact. Can you head to the next slide, please? Awesome. So first, what is WebXR and the immersive? So at a high level, many of you know the term XR, right? It's kind of this blanket term for kind of immersive experiences, whether they're VR or AR. And many of you know the terms web, right? We know the internet. We think of web browsers, Google Chrome, Safari, Firefox, what have you. And WebXR is basically a new way to build browser-based immersive experiences with web development languages. And that's extremely powerful, right? With this new API, with WebXR, your browser can communicate to a headset that's plugged into your computer. So if you have a Rift or a Vive plugged into your computer, you pull up a WebXR experience on your browser, you can push enter VR mode, and your computer will render to your headset. Similarly, on a device like the Oculus Quest that I'm on now, you can open up the Oculus browser, navigate to a website that's built with WebXR, and it'll let you just enter full immersive mode as if you're in a native VR experience. And that's incredibly valuable. If you think about so many VR developers that right now are kind of complaining about how hard it is to get into the Oculus store for the Quest. But anyone can make a WebXR experience that runs right from the Oculus Quest browser. So why does WebXR exist? On the one hand, browsers get more powerful every year, right? Google invests a ton of money into Chrome. It's the same with Safari and Firefox and all the other browsers. These just continue to get better, more efficient, and they're able to take advantage of your computer in a way that they haven't been in previous years. So, there's no app, there's no download, there's no install, there's no real kind of walled garden of different app stores. The web relies on open standards. And this is really like the last hope for truly cross-platform experiences in some ways, right? It's the web browser. So, why does this matter? We're gonna dive into it. Could you move to the next slide, please? Cool. So, we hear this term metaverse thrown around quite a bit. Everyone's trying to sort of build the metaverse. We're thinking about the metaphor of the metaverse. And, in some ways, the web has been the metaverse, right? The web has the open information sharing infrastructure that people often think of when they think of the metaverse, right? They think of this universe of interconnected links and portals that can take you anywhere with no limits and no horizons. And in some ways, right, that already is the internet, right? The internet has the underlying infrastructure of the metaverse already. So, when I think of the metaverse, the first thing that comes to my mind is the web. It's the internet. And now with the advent of WebXR, the ability to create immersive experiences that run from the web, I'm really convinced that the metaverse is really just the internet. It's the internet. So, the philosophy of the web has always been about ease of access, right? Not relying on downloads, not relying on installs, kind of low friction, low barrier to entry. Browsers are cross-platform with a few caveats. And developing for the web has a certain approachability to it that other development tools don't have. If you think about Unity 3D, I love Unity myself, but for the new kind of developer, you open it up and it's a little bit intimidating. Whereas learning like your first bits of HTML or JavaScript can actually be quite approachable. This isn't to say that the only way to build WebXR is with development languages. There are already no-code or low-code building tools out there that let you create WebXR without writing any code yourself. But for someone who's just trying to get their feet wet with it, they want to learn how to write code while creating 3D experiences, I think that WebXR is actually way more accessible than something like Unity 3D. Could you move to the slide, please? Cool. So, one thing that really excites me about WebXR is what students and teachers can do with it, particularly students and teachers who are trying to get into coding for the very first time. And, this is really personal to me because 2 years I couldn't write a line of code. And I started learning, this one way to build WebXR with a development framework called A-Frame. And 2 years later, I'm a WebXR developer for VirBELA. I really think that this journey is approachable, even for middle school students or just teachers who have never written a line of code in their lives. And I think that's just so powerful. So, with A-Frame, this is one way to create WebXR experiences. And with A-Frame, you use HTML to kind of build immersive websites. And if you look at my code, and I hope you can see it big enough, but in some ways, like this sort of makes sense. It's sort of readable, right? And here's my scene, by the way, on the right. It's like I have a box, a blue box. So there's my HTML, right? My A box tag. And now I have the attributes for its height and width and position and color. And, a simple scene like this, you could have your kids remix on a service called Glitch that just lets you kind of build websites. And then they'd see this code and you could say, just start out by changing their colors, right? Look at the color attribute and change it from red to whatever you want. And then, next thing you know, they sort of can already start grasping these concepts of, what is an HTML tag, right? That's what box is. What is an HTML attribute? These are these things like height, width, and position. And they can start adjusting those numbers. And before they know it, they'll be kind of making their own really simple scene. And I know that this is just like back to the basics, like the most simple scene imaginable. But this is just them, getting started in an approachable way that helps you learn the basic building blocks of HTML as you create an immersive website. And then you build on this knowledge to make increasingly more complex things. The product that I build now called Frame, that lets people come together inside of a WebXR scene, it's also built with A-Frame. Of course, the code for Frame looks a bit more complex than the code you see here, but it's the same concepts, right? So I think this is super cool. If you do want to get started like with this scene immediately and already start just tinkering around with some of these values, on this service called Glitch, you can remix the A-Frame starter project, and you can just get right off the ground immediately. And I'm not sure if this link is like live or whatever, but if you just Google like Glitch A-Frame project, you'll see a link and you can just remix it, and then you're off to the races on your own with your own WebXR website. So I think that's really cool. Could you move to the next slide, please? Cool. So, there's a whole range of WebXR creation tools out there. And as I said, they range from no code to light code to heavy code. On the low code side, that's part of what I'm doing with this tool called Frame. and it lives at framevr.io for those of you that want to check it out later. Kind of a drag and drop interface. You make multi-user WebXR sites, and you can bring in images, you can bring in 3D models, you can bring in 360 photos, and it's all drag and drop. And you're welcome to try it out. It's in beta. It might break on you. I apologize for the bugs that you inevitably run into, but you're welcome to try it out. There's another tool called Spoke from Mozilla, which is similar. Spoke lets you create 3D scenes and then publish them to Mozilla Hub, which is a really powerful collaborative WebXR platform. Mozilla Hubs, by the way, is also built with A-Frame and WebXR. And then the other ones, this is kind of a whole row of them. They increase in kind of complexity. You'll see A-Frame in there. A-Frame, you do have to write basic code, but you're able to write very basic HTML, those building blocks I showed you earlier. I think that's the best starting point, even if you don't have any coding experience. And then there are a few others. As you can see, big companies are investing in this space, right? So one of these tools is from Microsoft, one is from Amazon, one is from Facebook. So, I actually do have a hunch that there's firepower behind WebXR right now. And I think that's because a lot of these companies, just like me, really see the promise and potential of this technology. Now, I mentioned that Glitch A-Frame starter project for those of you that want to get started. But if you really want kind of a more guided experience, either for you or your students, I've made a series of free learning tutorials that take you from writing your very first line of code up to creating a pretty cool WebXR website that works on every VR headset, desktop, and mobile. And these live at learn.framevr.io. And it was really just a labor of love that I spun up a few months ago. And I've seen students and teachers hit this webpage without knowing any code. And when they've reached the final tutorial, they've actually made something very interesting that they're super proud of, and they feel like they know the basics of HTML and even JavaScript. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. It's a free resource. There are no ads. I don't ask for anything from you. You don't need to make an account. It's really just go for it. Okay, cool. Could you go to the next slide, please? Perfect. So, WebXR, although it is new, there already are some very compelling examples of it out in the wild. Some of you know Mozilla Hubs, as I said, is built with WebXR. Some of you know Sketchfab, the 3D model store. And by the way, can you all still hear me? Can I get some emojis, just if you can hear me? My screen is starting to stutter a little bit.
Okay, I think it's possible that he's just had a little problem. So we'll just see if he might disappear and return. Can you all hear me saying that? Yeah. Emojis once more? Yeah, okay, we'll just see. He looks like he's frozen. A common little outspacing. There he goes. Then he will try and come back in.
Just got randomly booted and kicked and made it back in.
Yeah. So usually I'm a Quest user myself, so I know it takes sometimes you get booted out and then you come back in again. So we will hang on and see.
I'm back.
Fabulous.
Can you all hear me?
Yay! Yeah,
Sorry,
I'm a Quest user myself. I know the problem. So I said you'd disappear, but you'd be back. Absolutely fine. Okay. Check your megaphone is still on, and then
I think my megaphone is on.
Yeah.
Thank you all for sticking around. I know you could have ditched, and fair enough. Do we still have slides accessible behind me? Hello, hello.
Yes, they're still there.
WebXR in the wild.
Okay. So. Perfect. So, some of you, I mentioned Mozilla Hubs. That's a WebXR created tool that I think is right now the best of the best, to be honest, in terms of collaborative VR experiences. And not necessarily because it has the most bells and whistles and the most features, but because it's simply the most accessible. It's accessible from mobile devices, right from a browser, from desktop, including Chromebook, and then also the fancy VR headsets. And I think that right now is incredibly valuable. Some of you know Sketchfab. So Sketchfab is a great repository of 3D models. Sketchfab is built with WebXR technology. That's the tech that lets you render that stuff right from a browser. Mozilla recently made a very provocative introduction to WebXR experience called Hello WebXR that I encourage you to check out. And then also the tool that I'm building called Frame is also built with WebXR. And again, Frame is also a social VR tool that runs right from a browser with no app, no download, no install. And it lets you kind of create simple scenes and navigate between them as if you were taking a group through a presentation, but instead of moving from slide to slide, you're moving from scene to scene, and you set up the scenes how you want. So WebXR, you know, it's still early days for it, but I think there are already some kind of provocative and compelling implementations of the technology that are already out there. Do I have a next slide? Or did my slides freak out? The slides might have freaked out, and that's fine. I believe that on my next slide, you know, I was going to kind of conclude with talking about, you know, when I think about the nature of the web and how it's evolving, and I think how the web is becoming immersive and the advent of WebXR technology. You know, in some ways, like our definition of a website is going to change. I think right now, when many of you think of websites, you sort of think of a flat experience. It's a 2D thing, and you're navigating between different flat pages, and you know that's what a website is. But you know, now that I've been kind of thinking about WebXR a lot and inside a lot of WebXR experiences, a lot of me browsing the web now is inside of 3D websites. I'm almost thinking of the word site back to its almost original context, right? When you hear the word site outside of the context of website, I personally think of like a location, right? It's a space. It's like, let's meet up at this site, or this is an archaeological site. You think of a space that you can navigate through and a space you can interact in with other people. So in some ways, like when I think now about a website, I'm going back to the roots of that word site. And I think that as the web evolves, that's sort of how we're going to be thinking about it as well. You'll just as much think about a space or a place when you think about the word site. When someone says, let's go to this website, it might very well be, you know, a real kind of WebXR 3D experience, just like this one, but it'll live on the web. So, you know, to sum it up, I think the metaverse is already here. It's the internet. As WebXR evolves, this is really going to bring this vision to life, right? The internet already has the architecture of an interconnected information sharing network with links between everything. So I think that's really exciting. I think WebXR poses some very interesting ways for teachers and students to dive into creation, starting from either no code itself or learning how to write the very first line of HTML while you build an immersive website. And for that, some starter projects are remixing the A-Frame glitch project or going to learn.framevr.io and checking out my free tutorials. And then finally, you know, I just think that the way that we think about the web right now in 5 years is going to be very different. I think that most websites you navigate to will have some kind of immersive component so that if people are browsing them and they have a VR headset, they'll be able to push the button and be inside of an experience that's more just like a site as we think of outside of the word website. So if you're interested in trying out the beta thing that I'm building with WebXR, I encourage you to check out framevr.io. It's a multi-user, no-code collaboration tool. It's in beta. But I also encourage you really to check out Hubs, which I think is the best of the best right now. Check out Sketchfab. And yeah, thanks for hearing me out about WebXR. I think it's the most exciting thing to happen to the web in a long time. As browsers evolve, we're going to see the lines blurring between what's a website and what's a native application. Pretty soon, you're going to be able to build native-like experiences that run right from a web browser. And I'm really excited about what this means for truly cross-platform experiences. I think the web will win. All right.
Gabe, we do actually have on the screen at the moment for slides, it says, what is a website? Are there further slides that you would like to go on to?
No, I think, I think that pretty much sums it up. Yep.
Fabulous. Okay.
Happy to take any questions of any sort.
Yep, I will put up the participation hand up. Any second now? There we go. You should all now have a raise hand button that's just appeared. If you wish to ask Gabe a question, please do click on that particular raise hand button and I will then unmute you. We already have 2. Fabulous. 3, in fact.
Do it.
So I'll get those up. Right. First of all, we have Thomas, and your username is on Thomas. Can you hear us? Yes,
There.
you should be live,
Yes.
Thomas.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can hear you.
Okay, so I've been to a few of these presentations on VR, and it's really great to see a kind of advanced expertise about understanding VR, kind of at this level, and it makes me think about how we communicate about VR, and that's kind of where my question is. I feel like when I talk to people about VR, they kind of exist on one of 3 levels. The first level would be people who have not tried VR but have an opinion about VR. So they might say, oh, it's too glitchy, it's too much of an early technology or something like that. The second group would be people who have maybe tried VR in a tech shop and just a couple times or whatever and experienced it a bit, and they had the kind of wow of trying a VR headset. But they don't really know what it's like to spend several days in here kind of coming in, or much longer even. I mean, then the third category is people like you, who you're kind of invested in VR in a way, you want to make a difference in VR, and your language around VR and your kind of rhetoric around VR is quite complex, and you need a certain high-level understanding of VR in order for the communication to kind of flow in that kind of way. And what I'm wondering is from you is if you have ideas about, or if you think it's important to be able to communicate to those different audiences about VR when you're explaining your ideas. You know, do you have a way of talking to people who don't know about VR, but you want to explain your complex idea? Is there a way of kind of serving that to them?
Yeah,
It's a bit of a meta question, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and you know, the issues around how to communicate VR are that's a really pressing question. You know, it's and I totally value that you're thinking about it and asking it. I think you know, some people for the first audience, those that haven't entered VR, it's actually quite difficult. VR is the kind of thing that I think is very difficult to communicate for those that haven't been in it, and sometimes you just sort of have to see it to believe it. But I think that I've interacted with a lot of people who haven't been in VR, but I'm interacting with them in a 3D world, often on a website, on a browser, and they're able to get a certain key aspect of it, even though it's not headset based. They're starting to understand the value of it, and they understand when I say, look, and you know, this is what it's like right now, but imagine in a VR headset, what it's like. You know, that's a really natural medium with which to explore this kind of thing instead of like the magic window of the desktop or the mobile phone. So I think there's some value in that, in sort of making VR approachable by not necessarily relying on the headset, but trying to see what you can show them on desktop that brings some aspect of the magic across, even if there's no VR headset involved. Now, that said, you know, one of the reasons why it was so nice to talk with all of you here in this context and in this audience was that I knew that many of you already have enough VR sort of chops and expertise, and you're invested in it enough that I can talk at a certain level that I wouldn't, you know, I would be saying different things, right, if I thought that this audience was totally fresh and new to VR. And so that was one of the reasons why it's so exciting to kind of be here in front of all of you. So yeah, all I can say is like you just be as patient as possible with those that are skeptical. And the thing is, even with the people that are skeptical, is I actually really relate to their skepticism. I was teaching back when iPads were going to change everything. And I think a lot of teachers have been through a number of different hype cycles around technology that comes and goes. And at the time, there's a ton of rhetoric around this is going to change everything. And there are a lot of companies that are invested in you adopting and buying their technology. And, I think a lot of teachers right now are actually a little bit fatigued at the number of revolutions they've gone through. There are only so many times everything can be revolutionized. So, I think having that kind of sympathy towards the skepticism you approach can be good shoes to wear, during that. So I hope that answered, a few of those questions. I think there's a lot more we could get into here, but happy to chat offline on more aspects of that.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a second question from Matthias P. Matthias P, I'm just going to put you on megaphone. And it's on. Matthias, are you there, please?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Great talk. Big fan of WebXR and WebVR. Very easy to deploy. There was just what was Global Game Jam just not that long ago, and with WebXR, it's just so easy to check those projects, even if they're not finished or they're just some concept demos. Even with sideload, I wouldn't probably bother sideloading those very simple apps, but with WebXR, it's not a problem, and a lot of them turned out to be quite entertaining. I'm just wondering, in order to build the metaverse, I've noticed that sometimes these web pages are linked, but even though there is a link from one website to the next, I still get redirected to a regular website, and I still have to click that Google Cardboard icon. I'm surprised that this hasn't been sorted out. Do you know if it's in the works so that you can have some kind of a smooth transition without having to leave VR, basically?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I know that this is something that the WebXR committee is actively working on, kind of links that truly keep you immersed. So what Matthew's referring to here is you can be in a WebXR website and you can click on a link to another one, but it takes you out of VR mode and you have to click a button to re-enter VR mode. And the way we expect this to work is you can just move one to the other and stay immersed, and that's what it should be. I think everyone is with you, Matthew, that it should be that way. We also recognize it's not quite there yet, but I know that people are actively on the case.
Okay, megaphone's gone off. There you are.
Okay,
Matthias, did you want
much.
to say anything else? It's back on. Okay.
I think I'm glad that it's being worked on. Thank you for answering my question.
That's fine. Okay, we have another question from Rob, who I met earlier.
Don't be shy.
Megaphone on. Yeah, absolutely. Rob, another speaker. Welcome, Rob. Oh, try that again.
It's on. I think I'm good. Okay, good. Yeah. Sorry. Thanks, Gabe. That was a really great talk. You got me excited about WebXR. My question for you might be a dumb question, but how much agency can you build into WebXR? Can you construct experiences in there where people can do things, build things, practice something, procedure, and so on?
Yeah, you absolutely can. In the same way that, I think, well, let me maybe highlight what seems to be sort of the limitations right now with WebXR compared to like native applications. So the one limitation of the web is the complexity of models that you can have in the experience. And, if you think about some of these apps that are Unity, some of the really nice looking VR applications, the models look really crisp, they're really high resolution. Sometimes you need like a really beefy PC to even run them. That is still, the web can handle a lot. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at what the web can handle, but it can't handle rendering that kind of like upper level complexity of some of those native applications. Now, with respect though to, can you build certain procedural things? Can you have people creating things? You absolutely can. WebXR relies on like traditional web development languages like JavaScript and HTML, and really the sky is kind of the limit with respect to what you can do with those languages. Like I've seen someone build a Minecraft clone with WebXR. With FrameVR, the tool that I'm building at framevr.io, you can bring in pretty advanced models. You can bring in 360 photos. You talk. You have voice chat. You have laser pointers. You can do kind of the basics of simple scene creation. So I think we're just at the point now where a lot of developers are turning their attention to WebXR, and they're going to be unleashing their skills on it. And when you think about like all the developers that are out there in the world, there's a small section of them that build like with Unity and Unreal and these traditional like VR game engines. And there are hundreds times more web developers. And one of the things that really excites me about WebXR is there are already tons of people out there that have the skills they need to create very powerful WebXR experiences without having to learn something like Unity 3D or the Unreal Engine and things like that. So I think we're just starting to see, you know, the kinds of experiences that people can build. In my mind, the sky's the limit. I can't think of something that I couldn't do or build with Frame down the line. The features that I want to build with Frame, there's nothing I can think of where I think, oh, WebXR can't handle that. Besides right now, the rendering of super, super complex, high poly, you know, complex geometry scenes.
I'm guessing 5G will change all of that.
I think 5G will change a heck of a lot of it. There's also a new web development tool out there called WebAssembly that is basically making it so that you can run like native experiences right from the browser. And that's also going to change the game for WebXR. I think there's kind of a perfect storm of technologies that are aligning and are going to continue to align in the years to come that make WebXR really, really powerful.
Rob, is there anything else you want to add?
Well, I'll just ask a quick question about VirBELA, if I can.
Yeah.
I think it's you can go into VirBELA in VR. Is it going to be compatible with the Quest anytime soon?
So that's a great question. So Rob's asking about VirBELA. The company that I work for, Frame, is kind of an experimental beta product that I manage there. But VirBELA's core platform, which is called surprisingly VirBELA, is a social application where you can have thousands of people in there at once, really good for large-scale online events, like whole virtual campuses that a business or university can interact in. VirBELA was interesting. They actually decided to focus on like desktop first, really, before trying to nail VR. And we're actually just now in the process of like rejiggering our VR application. I think we'll have a new build out for Rift and Vive soon. I know that Quest is on our roadmap. Quest is a bit challenging for VirBELA because of the size of the VirBELA campus. It's so large, and the scale that is supported in VirBELA right now is still a bit tough for us to manage on Quest. I think we'll get there. For those that are OK desktop experiences, you absolutely should check out VirBELA. I think it's kind of best in class if you're good with desktop. For those that are really pushing the edge with VR and they really want to see stuff on Quest, we're not there quite yet, but what VirBELA can throw at you now, at least, is Frame, which is my WebXR thing that does work on the Quest and any other VR headset, basically. So, long story short, for VirBELA, VR coming soon. In the meantime, you're welcome to try out framevr.io.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you very much, Rob. We also have a hand raised by Dizzled. Interesting name. Just waiting to see if he comes online. Dizzled, you're online. Do you wish to ask a question?
So I just have a question about like the timeline. When do you expect this to be WebXR to be sort of developed to the point where someone can develop on Unity and basically upload it online and not have any different restraints than they would with like a native app?
It's a great question. So to not have any difference, I'd probably put that at 4 or 5 years. The question like to build on Unity and then publish to WebXR. Unity is actually working on some very advanced web exporter tools that use that technology I mentioned, WebAssembly, that lets you publish native-like code right to the browser. So I think Unity is really on the case. I do know that there is a basic way to export from Unity to WebXR. There's a plugin that Mozilla made for Unity that lets you publish kind of simple scenes right now to WebXR. I think that's an okay starting point, but you won't be able to get like very complex Unity projects to WebXR, that tool, just yet. So I think we're probably a few years out from really getting to like build whatever you want on Unity and publish to the web. But I think as WebXR evolves, Unity will just be one of the many possible tools that you can use out there to build immersive experiences. And while Unity is great, I think there's some disadvantages to like fully relying on proprietary technology like that if you don't necessarily need to. So, you know, when I build Frame, we're just building with like open web languages, right? With HTML and JavaScript and stuff like that. So I think Unity, yeah, I ramble too much on these answers, but the short of it is, I put it a few years till you can go from Unity to WebXR with real feature and graphics parity. But in the meantime, I do think Unity will just be one of many WebXR creation tools out there.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have another one. A lot of questions in here. It's good. We have, when he comes online, Dylan. Dylan, you're free to ask a question.
Hello.
Even, not answer. Ask a question.
Hey, Dylan.
Excellent. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Great. I'm really curious when it comes to social interaction. You know, I think VR does a great job of capturing some of the very kind of core aspects of being in a physical space with other people in terms of eye contact, you know, hand movement at the very least, and just the ability to form small groups and whisper to somebody next to you and without, you know, like in a Zoom conference or something, talking to everybody. I'm curious from your perspective, what are the major challenges to overcome in helping VR to feel more like you're meeting with people in real life? And what are the barriers to overcoming that?
Yeah, that's a great question. In some ways, it goes well beyond the scope of sort of WebXR, but that's okay because it's a great question and a really provocative one. You know, I think you're right that your core thesis. I think many of us are in agreement with, right, that there's something qualitatively different about interacting in VR versus on something like a Zoom call. I think you're right, that sense of space, the sense of presence, the gestures, which are so important for communication, you know, sort of where you're looking. So, you know, I think in some ways we've nailed a lot of the pieces already. Like social VR has come so far already in the past few years that I think we're at this point now where some really smart people need to get together and think, you know, what does the next generation of this look like, and how do we feel human and keep it compelling. I think that, you know, one of the interesting things we run into here with like what I hear from clients sometimes is they think that it'll get more human and real if the environment around you looks crisper and higher resolution. And while I think there's one aspect to that, you know, just like having the environment look more realistic and shadows and lighting and so forth can be helpful. I think that the provocative challenge for us is to think about how we design these environments in a way that really takes advantage of their virtuality in such a way that kind of frees us from the limits that would otherwise be constrained by a physical meeting room. So I'm overall with you on the goal of making these interactions feel more human, but I wouldn't say that means we need to really entirely align with like how a physical meeting takes place in a room, because here in VR, right, we don't have those limitations and we can do so much more. So it's kind of like a dual struggle between, you know, preserving those metaphors from real world interactions that we know that we love and that make interpersonal interaction in a physical space feel so real and powerful and impactful. But also then thinking really imaginatively about how we can make these kinds of spaces different from the real world as well. And I think finding that balance between the magic you can do in VR that you can't do in physical space on the one hand, and then on the other hand, still replicating the magic that is in physical spaces when you're face to face with a group of people, that's going to be sort of the challenge for us. And you know, admittedly, I don't really have those answers. I've got some ideas about how this might move forward. A lot of them are untested. And I think we're all in kind of pioneering territory right now, trying to sort that out together.
Fantastic. Okay, we have one more question. It has to be quite a quick one because fairly soon now we need to move out of this space. Ooh. Or rather, there's going to be another presenter setting up fairly soon. He's taken himself off the list. Actually, it was Alfie, but he's just taken himself off.
Okay.
He's disappeared. Well, I'll double check that actually. Yeah, no, we don't have Alfie anymore. He's disappeared off my list. Right, after this, in this particular space, there is a session on inspiring students to be digital storytellers, even, by Paula McDowell, in this particular space we are in now. But even more importantly, can we all give a very, very big hand to our wonderful speaker, Gabe? Love and claps and loads of love and loads of claps. Fantastic. It was pretty, it's not my subject, but I've learned so much, Gabe. Thank you very much.
Cool. Well, thank you all for coming again. Yeah, it's just a really special opportunity to be able to talk about this stuff that I love so much with you all. And if any of you would like to try out framevr.io, I encourage you to. I'd be happy to meet you in there on whatever platform you'd like. You can create your own frames, invite people to them, start having your own meetings. So would greatly appreciate any feedback on that. And yeah, just grateful for your time today.
If anybody wishes to go and talk informally, there is a teleporter. If you go out of this space here, where Gabe's going actually, to the globe, and there's a little teleporter to a social space where you can actually talk to our speaker if he's going there. Gabe, are you going there? Yes, he's going that way. He's headed there. So you can talk to him, or you can stay here, wait for the next speaker. I shall make sure I also unmute you all. There we go. You are all unmuted. Thank you for being here on this wonderful conference. I shall see you all soon.
Thank you.
Hey all.
Yeah, you can make sure you take your megaphone off.
Oh.
So will I. Here we go. Are you unmuted, everybody? Yeah. Okay.
We should go into the social space then.
Yeah. That's fine. I've got to go to another event now.
Yeah, the portal right here.
Because I'm supposed to be filming in here till 11, apparently.
Yeah, I've got I've got a different session to go to, so that's fine, Duchess. If you hang around here, I've got to go to another. I'm moderating somewhere else. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
So hopefully, okay. That's
So
on
I
my page
panicked
here.
a bit when I heard that someone hadn't shown up. But I'm just a
Oh, earlier.
yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See if they turn up. They should turn up fairly soon. Normally.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I mean, if you're worried, you could go. Well, let's stay here. Stay
Well,
here.
We're still live.
Just getting my page up.
If he's not turning up in a sec, I'm going to have to turn this stream off.
Probably best to have separate ones anyway, I think.
Okay.